So with all these commercial directory servers dying, we have this need to have migration between these various SunDS and other products to something new. And so Alban's here. He's going to talk a little bit about how to manage migration. Alban's a founder of the SmartWave company, which was in 2001, correct? And is located in Geneva. Welcome, Alban.
That presentation will be very intensive, so I will not read everything that will be presented in the slides to keep time for questions. So be ready for the short and intensive run. We will start with the common things and go higher and higher to have like a tool or a framework on the way to migrate complex LDAP infrastructure. Everything's known, all the directories from Sun, from Novell, and Sun and Novell as no more the best vendors in companies or governments. Also, the compatibility matrix of the third-party products like applications, tools, development kits, etc. has changed. We have no more Solaris and SUSE like we had before. We have more and more Microsoft environments. And we also have some challenges like IBM, Apache DS, OpenDG, Red Hat DS, etc. So world is changing around LDAP. It's not dead, but it's changing. Also, the open source projects went out the university core. Students are mature, they are in the companies, in corporates, and they have some big implementation of open source products. It was not the case before. With that, of course, all of you who are operating directories are the best directorate in the world. Of course, because the directory is fast, stable, it does everything you need, you don't spend too much time on it, and it works. Perfect world. But it's not very unique. All of your unique directory is the same than the directory of the neighbors, because you are using just small parts of the capabilities of the directories. At the common layer, bad things first. You don't want to go too deep in the directory because it could be too close to the proprietary implementation. It could be too costly to have the good learning curve. So you do lazy things. You have the root, directory manager, etc., password, and account used for anything. Could be monitoring, provisioning, backup, etc. You don't spend time to go through the logs files. It works. Don't need to go on the logs. Of course, as it works, no one knows how to back up and restore, so no DRP. That's fine. If my machine is good, my LDAP service is good. For the schema extensions, probably most of you has click, click, click approach, and you don't know the uniqueness of your extension. The uniqueness is based usually on the name you want to put inside the schema for an attribute or an object class. And all of that is very unique to everyone. Sometimes you have to go from your comfortable zone and migrate because we have more and more Microsoft integration requests. You have to play with Active Directory, SharePoint, Kerberos, Adam or LDS directories. You have new operating system virtualizations. Not all the servers, directory servers support virtualizations. And the world is changing. For example, you are not the only people that own the directory, because you have to share with the internet, share on the cloud, share with partners, etc. So everything is moving. And of course, you've got some budget constraints. You know, most of you have to do more with less money and less people. So please anticipate your migration. Don't be forced to migrate all in the same way if you don't want. Try to have a cool migration path. Much comfortable for everyone. So, be ready to go. You have everything on your hand. Start with data cleaning. You have to clean your dirty directory. I'm sure all of you has test objects, has test data, has something with good format. It was at the beginning of the project, and a lot of things that worse and worse and worse come in your directory with more and more people or developers are playing with your baby. For the schema, you perform some tests to have an extension, and the project didn't go live, but the extension is still present. I told about the uniqueness. Please do your schema extension unique for your environment and use the personal enterprise number from YANA. Don't use the default schema extension, please. Also, the indexes. Index if you want good performances. Don't add everything without checking the indexes. Inventory is also outside the directory itself. Go to the DNS alias, for example. Go to the script, the config application, the load balancers, LDAP proxies, virtual directory, etc., etc., etc. We have some complex features in directory. You know from them? Probably we have no idea of the performance of our directory. It works on that environment. Nobody is complaining about that, so it's good. If you have to migrate outside to put your directory in other hands, you have to define metrics to be sure that the quality is there. Groups and groups and groups, very common issue from Novell and Microsoft. All the people have nested group with nested group with nested group with nested groups. You have no control on who is doing what and why. The ICLs, for a specific project, I had a specific ICL for an application account. I had another application account with another ACL, etc. I cannot manage the security of my directory with that. It's so complex. Please prefer a group or subtree-based access control, no more individual access control. And sometimes you have to determine what is changing in your directory. If you have to migrate, if the migration is planned to take months or years sometimes, you have to put your old and your new directory in sync. But it's very difficult to find the minimum level of granularity of changes. It's very nice to put everything in one shot, very difficult to have delta synchronization. You can have some tools. You can have some external policies. For example, if you have more, if you have 4 or 5 multi-master directory, don't care about that. If you have just one application that is allowed to write and to provision your directory data. So go outside your directory. Something that's very complex usually is the supported control. You have 1 or 2 supported control that are common to directory vendors. You have server-side control and VLV, that's all. For all the rest, you have some proprietary integration, and it's not, of course, compliant with the competitors. All of that is mandatory, at least to determine if it's a good or bad choice to go to a new directory and which directory to choose. One tip, if you want to check the list of supported control, just go with a simple, non-existing entry that is the root DSE. Every directory is supporting that, except someone that requires you to be authenticated to do that. Oh, I missed that. Nobody is interested about that, probably, but I will talk about the password case. If you want to migrate from an existing directory to another one, you will have the security officer to say, oh, what about my password? I have a good password policy on the old directory. I want a safe password policy in my target directory. I don't want you to extract. I don't want you to compare. I don't want you to migrate anything about password, but everything should be transparent. You know that? So what to do? First, you have to identify the password policies. Password policies sometimes are not compliant. You have some password policy, very simple, some other very complex. You have some third-party tools that can handle the password policies. So take care about the password policies. Even if you are able to transport the password, you could not change the password because the password will be synchronized in two environments. One will accept the new password, the other one will reject it. So take care, you can fail your migration with that. Also, you've got some attributes on the mainly user objects that point with the DM the right password policy. If you change the directory with the new structure, with the new naming convention, with anything else, your password policy will not exist anymore. So you have to rewrite everything on the new system. Sometimes you have the password also that is encrypted. Not all the passwords are in clear text, I hope. If you've got encryption, you have to deal with the keys. I remember one of my customers that play with IBM directory, a specific encryption key, very strong, and nobody knows how to extract it, how to manage the encryption key. So it was a good idea to have a strong password policy with a strong proprietary hash, but it is not usable at all. Sometimes you cannot get the old password, and it's often the case. But why do you need to get the old password? The password is not an attribute like the others you can put from one place and send to a target. You have to use the password just to authenticate. So please think higher than the directory itself. Think to have identity federation. It's the application that will maintain the authentication and one trust source, not your directory anymore. You can have pass-through authentication. With the pass-through authentication, once a bind request comes to your directory, you can forward the request to, for example, Active Directory, the original directory, to an external data source, and validate the authentication. After that, you can choose to store or not the validated password. So most of cases are without get or collect the existing password. Some specificities in the vendor's implementation of the LDAP standards are operational attributes. You have the timestamps. Of course, if you migrate, you will not have the capability to write the same timestamps. The timestamps of the object creation, for example, of the owner of the object, the creator of the owner, will change. You cannot keep that. So if your applications use, for example, the creation timestamp, the valid creation date for the user, it's wrong. It's OK for the object, not for the user. So take care. You can have a lot of side effects with that. Also, you have the referrals that could change. On the same entry, on another directory server, it's not the same approach, not the same DN, so take care. You have a lot of attributes. It could be the internal ID. You have the replication data, a lot of things that are specific to a directory you cannot migrate. Of course, virtual attributes. They are not physical attributes. How do you migrate something that does not exist? Sometimes it's possible, sometimes not. We will have a look on that just in a few slides. So, common things are init person and user. Init person are usually a subset of proprietary user object class. You've got group of names, group of unique names. I don't talk about the naming attributes, you know, UID and CN, probably. It's a very common difference. The DIT could be different. For example, you've got an organization. You've got an organizational unit, and you put a subtree. Sometimes you can have a user with data under a specific subtree under each user, but it's not compatible with every directory. For example, with Microsoft organization, you cannot create other things than organizations under that. Sometimes you have some trouble. You have to change probably your DIT or be prepared to change. The ACLs, they are not compatible at all. You've got 10, 20 models of ACLs. So you can't keep your ACLs as is. Of course, all the extension you put on your directory, it could be commercial, third-party, open source, proprietary, what you want, but it doesn't work. DSML, take care. If you've got an HTTP and validation of your protocol with the SOA framework, you can have to authenticate your request. If you change the directory, you have to authenticate in another manner. If not, that will fail. So how to migrate? First, start with the dev environment. Just basic. Check that what you assume is okay. If you have the supported control, very good choice. If not, bad choice. So usually you have to find some workarounds on the client applications. You have to develop your own code. For example, it could be to write your own extension when possible. If not, you have to change your dream. The directory you selected originally was not the right candidate to migrate easily. Sometimes you have to evaluate the effort to migrate to another one compared to try to fit everything in this directory. So take care about that. Sometimes it's a kind of no-go. Of course, check the schema. Many things about schema. Usually you've got some attributes that are required, some other not. You have some attributes that are multi-evaluated in one way and mono-evaluated in the target. So you have to extend the schema, even if it is the default schema provided by the directory editor. So take care about that. Of course, I will insist, it's the first thing I do that, but all around the slide, script it, script it, script it, script it. If you do by hand, you will lose the knowledge. You will not be able to replay in another environment, in another server, in another thing. So please script everything. As you are good guys, you prepare everything with your schema extension on the YANA unique number. And you have to perform all the indexes. Of course, as I said, virtual directory, you cannot index virtual directory. So take care. Sometimes it works or not. Once everything is installed, you have to tune it. Very common set of tuning, but some things are very specific. First, your old directory, just use LDAP. Don't use LDAP only anymore. Prefer LDAP-S, not very good, but prefer more start TLS. Much, much more secure, supported by everyone, and you have more control on who is accessing your directory, and you don't care about the security of the data over the network. Also, something that are not good is the monitoring. implement the LDAP in the legacy monitoring system. It could be Nagios, it could be proprietary system, I don't care about that, but put your system in your LDAP environment in a monitoring system. Don't leave it alone. Sometimes I like that. Very, very good tool. If you don't have the chance to have the budget to buy external tools to make reports on a directory, you have some on the market, some tools that perform good reports, mainly on the Microsoft environment, but not only. If you don't have that, you can use any tool that are able to perform SQL requests to build reports with a JDBC LDAP bridge. It's an open source, so you can use it, build it, and you can use your directory like any SQL data source. Very, very useful to monitor your system. Of course, update your documentation. Please document everything. Your son, your daughter will like that. Now, the production environment, much bigger, much stronger. So to do that, do like the same procedures you put in the dev environment. You script it, so it's easy. But don't care, password is not a very good password. So change the password. If you have the chance to use non-default root or privileged accounts, please do that. Don't use default password. Crypt your disk, do everything you know about good practices you didn't have the chance to perform before. Also maintain your certificates. The certificates is not only the certificates on the server side, it's the certificates on the client application, and mostly the way you will manage the certificate. If you put a certificate you are not able to renew, you are not able to blacklist, you are not able to maintain, don't put the certificates. You will lose your directory in 2 years when the certificates will expire. So please, if you don't know how to do that, go to your security officer and ask to integrate the certificate in the standard PKI of your company. Better choice, but don't do self-signed certificates if you are not able to manage anything. Good opportunity to refresh everything about backup and restore procedures. So backup the old directory, backup the directory without data, just to perform a clean setup. After that, to restore, you will have an import of the data. That's all thing you have to do. Test the restoration. You can backup. If you have never performed a restoration, your backup has no value at all, because on a Sunday evening, your directory will crash, and nobody will be able to put the service up. So please test the restoration. Usually, you have to restore the environment, the account that runs the system, the disk space, the volumes, mount for the logs, etc. Put the engine of directory, the instance, the configuration, of course, and then the data. Test also the rollback. If something is wrong, I saw one customer, one failure on a switch. It was not the case of the migration, but the switch failed. We have to stop the migration in the middle. So we had to roll back. So be ready to roll back on any time. And have an idea of the time for you to roll back. If you have to contact system engineers, if you have to contact people using the DNS, people using the backup tapes, etc., be ready to have them when you migrate, and evaluate the time you know for them. Now it's time to go live. Communicate that as any migration, you could have some service disruptions. Probably not, but it may be. So anticipate the case. Also, check your checklist. Open the firewall if needed, because you put everything in a new environment, new zone, very nice, but every firewall locked the accesses. So it's not good. Feel free to restart the client application. It's very common to have applications that don't know how to react when a directory is no more available or when a directory changes to another target. If you change your DNS and your directory doesn't, the application doesn't change or restart, you could have some failures. Now we will go to 3 cases: standalone, replicated, and complex LDAP infrastructure. What is a compatible directory to migrate? For example, you've got same editor on the new release. You've got same origin from the directory, like Sun or OpenDS. What you can do usually, it's a one-way flow. You had a replica. The new directory is a replica. One flow is enough usually, because 2 flows are not often supported, unfortunately. And you initialize the new directory with the data from the old one. Very straightforward, very easy, usually painless migration. If not, you have to be prepared to write a lot of things. There is no standard tool to do that. So on the old directory, you will have to activate the changelog, because while you will migrate, of course, the application and the users will still work and write data on your directory. So you have to be prepared to put the delta on the new directory. It could be a long time effort. Sometimes I had some system with a coexistence or 2 or 3 years due to the compatibility of one critical application that is not able to move to the new directory. So take care, the coexistence could last longer than you expected. LDAP is a very good and common way to export, but sometimes it's not possible. I talk about virtual directory. If you are in an environment, on the source, you've got some virtual directory. On the target, you have also virtual directory. If you extract in LDAP, usually with an LDAP search or something else, you will keep the virtual directory as hard-coded as a real attribute. So you will erase and lose the benefits of virtual directory, as it will be no more virtual in the target. It will be fixed attributes. So take care. Also, a good way is to extract data without the directories, without the virtual directories, and you have a full database export. But take care, with the full database export, you have to change and clean a lot of things. But sometimes in the only way. Same thing for referral. If you have some referrals, you can extract everything and try to write entries twice. So probably the first will be the master and the second will fail. So take care with referrals. Of course, you will adapt everything with scripts. One common thing is about all the customers that use your, or the clients that use directory, they will use code, they will use an LDAP browser, they will use an application with different SDK, etc. Sometimes in the DN you will separate the level of the trees with comma, space, sometimes without space. If you want to compare some things to clean, everything will fail. So please avoid that. So you have to remove during the migration all comma space in the DN if they represent a new level in your directory. You also have some incompatible attribute object class, so remove them. You have to add by default some values. It could be just a description, migrated, and timestamp. It could be a new object class. Everyone will have the new object class in order to fill the new system. For example, if you go to Sun or Novell to Microsoft LDS, you will have to put the user class just for that. And you have to change a lot of things in the attribute name to be sure they are unique and supported. You have to trim spaces, to change date formats. Very funny if you are using, for example, date format with Microsoft. On Active Directory, you've got 5 dates formats. that are, of course, incompatible between them. So take care. The generalized timestamp is not the only that format you will find. You have to play with a lot of formats. So you import the LDAP in the new directory. Please use bulk import. Don't use LDAP modify. It's so long, it will be complex. Every CPU will be used, every bit of memory will be used. So use bulk import to speed up the import. Also, if you have coexistence and rollback, be prepared to do the same thing from old to new to old. Twice you have to work on that. Same thing, blah, 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 blah. Script it. If you are in a replicated environment, usually on a compatible directory environment, very easy, configure one way and it's okay, except if you reach the limit. Most of the directory, or all directory has 2 or 4 multi-master supported replica. How to add a new one if you reach the limit already? No choice. You have to remove one and add a new one at the ultimate in the replication ring. If you do that, probably it will be very smooth. So initialize the new directory in the replication ring and it should work. On the new infrastructure you build, just care about the data you will put. So your data you will put in your directory will come from the old directory with writable capabilities. If you have just read-only directories, don't care about that. Don't put changelog detection, etc. Don't care about that. They will not write anything. So prepare, as usual, the delta. Adapt the export you will be able. And same things with new directory, with write capabilities, you have to be ready for rollback. So detect the changes. Most common thing is to have the audit. The audit file is very common, sometimes not possible. So you have some proprietary changelog mechanisms. All of them are specifics. So don't say, okay, I succeeded once, I will do the same in another vendor directory. It doesn't work. You have some tools that listen any change on the directory and are able to collect the changes, push in the delta. You have some third-party tools like Axod can perform a delta and provide the delta to the new directory. To do that, if your coexistence lasts weeks, months, and years, have an automation environment, automated everything. So if you script it, it's easy. If not, you will spend days and nights every hour to press on the button to run your scripts. How to migrate a complex infrastructure? What is a complex infrastructure in LDAP? You have multiple backends, because all we talk about that is a very simple system with one database. Sometimes you have more than one database on a single directory, one by branch, for example. You've got external referrals. You've got a replication topology with a hub. You access not only to the data, but to the data with transformation through your virtual directory or your proxy. So take care. You've got a lot of write operation. You cannot stop the service. You cannot get easily the delta. Of course, you can have downtime. Take care about that. In most environments, the application supports downtime. You can have few hours downtime in the night on one server in one time zone, for example. So by default, yes, LDAP is very critical, our system. We cannot stop anything, 24-hour service, no disruption allowed, etc., etc. In fact, you can have downtime, usually, because you have a backup, you have a multi-master replica, you can have some things. So if you can plan a downtime, it's much easier. Sometimes not possible, but rarely. With a compatible directory, what you can do, same thing that you do in simple or a multi-master replica, add a new replica. That's all. Don't use the binary feed. Take care. You can put sometime the replication up with a binary export and import the binary. That doesn't work in that kind of environments. Use the LDAP replication over LDAP. It will be slow. It will be time consuming. It will be bandwidth consuming. It will be CPU consuming. Yes, but it will work on the first time. On the first shot, you will do that. If you try with binary, you will have a lot of troubles in very big environments, very intensive writes. So, yes, it will take sometimes hours, sometimes days to migrate, but you will have a safe migration. If not compatible, the only thing you have to keep in mind, don't try to find the things that will not work. You will always find things or procedures that will not work. Try to make it simply. If it is simple, it will work. So try to simplify your migration. So try to decrease the number of all directories that have write capabilities. For read capabilities, you don't care about that. Just focus on the servers with write capabilities. Sometimes it could be just to add CPU, memory, that's enough. Adapt your DNS alias. Use the LDAP proxy to switch easily between write or read request if you can change the role of a directory. So you can have external view of your directory. You can use hub to help replica. With the hub, you concentrate all the traffic on one server, and you keep the other ready for the migration with no traffic coming from anywhere or having all the bandwidth for replication. Also, think that you have more power on the new servers. Your old directories are 4, 5, 8 years old. The servers are very old. Now you've got new servers. So use new bandwidth, new RAM, new CPU, new SAN, new engineers that will work for you. So anything new probably will help you to simplify your migration. Don't have the same thing in mind than you had a few years ago. In conclusion, if you want to migrate, the LDAP v3 will not help you in any way, because any vendor has its own point of view of the best of the LDAP in its own product, depending on the time, of course. If you have a good preparation, probably you will succeed your migration. If not, you will be in trouble and spend nights and weekends. You have a big, big effort to script. Probably while you operate, you don't have time and don't care about scripting, automated everything. If you want to migrate, prepare rollback, prepare complex or small migration, it will be the same. Automate it and script. But it's also a good opportunity to improve your control on your directory. You were lazy, now you will be the master of your directory. Big change. And good for your yearly annual evaluation. Okay. Now I have more value. You can open to new services, like voice over IP, identity federation. I said, if you have no password synchronization, it could be a good way to use extensible SAML or the identity federation implementation on the application side. In fact, most of the directories can migrate successfully, more or less painful, but you could succeed your migration, but take care, directory is a commodity. You are not the king of the IT with all your knowledge of the LDAP. You are just someone that is working for application, for systems, for security, for something else. That's all. Good migration now. Just have to work.
Okay, so let's see. We get some. We have time for a few questions. Anyone?
What about Big Bang migrations? You explained you have to synchronize all writes from the old system to the new. Do you have any experience when you can have a Big Bang migration between the old system and the new system?
Yes. You can have Big Bang migration if you have a simple environment. Very common if you have few applications or few different client types on your directory. If you have a lot of directories, you can. So to have a Big Bang application, Big Bang migration, usually I recommend, for example, you've got a web application on your DMZ, you've got an open LDAP built with your application server. Yes, you can have a Big Bang because you have one kind of application, or only one application. So it's very easy to migrate. If you have a complex infrastructure, usually it's not very easy as you have a lot of writes. You cannot stop officially. Sometimes you have to stop. And on a Big Bang migration, you cannot go back. And as I show you that you've got a lot of things to prepare, in fact, you miss some things. And in a Big Bang, you will have to be prepared to have a lot of people on the help desk that are ready to forward you something. You have to analyze everything from the network traffic. You have to be ready for the PKI to prepare the new certificates to be deployed on client systems, etc., etc. So take care about the Big Bang. Very easy for simple monolithic directory, once application, once directory, yes. For the others, it could be critical.
Okay, do we need more questions? Oh, we have one down here. And
there are many of the techniques and suggestions that I recognize. I saw them in some of the migrations. There is one that I see more often on the last time, and I was surprised, or maybe there is a good reason to not talk about that, is to use an access layer, a proxy access layer, and to have the new and the old setup, to use the proxy and to move, so the applications don't see the movement from the old setup to the new one. So maybe there was a reason to not talk about that.
The proxy avoid the applications to know the vendor, to know the proprietary characteristic like supported control, avoid to know a lot of things. So if your application is able to work properly with LDAP proxy, you have an abstraction layer that allows you to present what you want to the client. So you are able to delete, to remove, to build some attribute, object class, etc. in a very deep work. And you will ease the migration, because one of the stops in the migration process is the supported compatibility matrix. Some applications just work, for example, with Sun directory, and Sun directory does not exist anymore. You don't have the matrix updated to Oracle directory or compatible with other directory. So you have to simulate that. And sometimes to simulate, you go deeply on the schema, on the code of the system to make as is, but it's very complex, very costly. It takes time. If you put a virtual directory or virtual proxy, and LDAP proxy, you will avoid most of that work. So much simpler to implement, much faster to implement.
Okay, one more question, or we have two, I guess. We'll kind of both short, and we will hopefully get both of them in.
Very short, and not a question to you, but to all of us. Who has not had experience migrating a directory, and who has already done it?
Oh.
Who did it? Yeah, who have no previous experience migrating a directory, and who has already migrated a directory? The two sets of people. You did it. Yeah.
Very short one. Is there, from an LDAP point of view, preferred scripting language?
No. The good scripting language is the language you can maintain. So don't try to go with Perl, because Perl is very good for anything if you have never started with Perl before. Use VB-script.
Okay, so thank you, Alban.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now take a 30-minute